Okay, I'm going to get started. It's about 7:30. This is my class on how to make waxed linen. Waxed linen, if you're wondering why you think you might want to know how to make waxed linen, it was basically the medieval solution to plastic wrap. Anything that a modern person would use plastic wrap for, you would use in the Middle Ages, you would have used waxed linen. It is waterproof. It's not it doesn't make a waterproof seal over what you're sealing, but it does, it forms a kind of a waterproof barrier. And this is my craft room of doom, as you see here on the table. And I am Mistress Gerode Benet, if we've met, if we haven't met. So I'm going to try not to say a whole lot, but I know I will. So the first thing you need to have to make the waxed linen is melted wax, melted beeswax to be specific. And there are a couple of different ways to melt the wax. The way I melt the wax most commonly is in this electric skillet here. This is an electric skillet that I only use for melting wax. I bought it at the thrift store, so it only cost about $5, and so that's what I use to melt wax. I can't show you, I don't think it'll zoom in. I only have it set on warm. I do not turn it up very high. I don't turn it up past the warm setting, because you don't need a lot of heat to melt the beeswax. And this is actually a safety issue, because beeswax melts between 144 and 147 degrees Fahrenheit. And it begins to discolor if it gets heated above 185 degrees Fahrenheit. So you always do want to make sure you are not heating it above 185 degrees. Beeswax has a flash point of 400 degrees, and that means if it gets heated to 400 degrees or higher, it will burst into flames. It is flammable. You do not want to walk away from the beeswax when you are heating it, when you are melting it. You don't want to walk away from it. And I see people are joining the class. Hello, hello. The other way to melt the wax safer way, actually, is to use a double boiler. And this is my double boiler setup. Let me see if I can scoot that a little closer so you can see it. There's my arm. Hi. This is a stainless steel bowl, again, from the thrift store. What I will do is take this stock pot, put some water in the bottom of it, put this bowl over the top. It fits actually really nicely right there. Put it on my heat source, and when the water boils, it will melt the wax without getting it too hot. So double boiler is the safest way, but this is also, since I'm keeping an eye on it, it is not going to get too it's not going to get too hot if I don't heat it further than warm. So it says, which is why I will never do this product, because I would walk away and my whole house would be engulfed in flames. This is why you don't want to walk away from it, because you don't want your entire house to be engulfed in flames. The other thing you need, other than the melted wax, to make waxed linen is, of course, linen. I'm going to make mug cover sized pieces of waxed linen, so I just have some little squares of linen. You can make bigger sheets. You're really only limited by the size of your pan. This is a large sheet that I made. I don't even know if I can get that in the frame. This is a fairly large sheet. You can see it's got some crackles in it from where it has been folded, but it is still watertight and saturated with wax. So you can make large pieces, you can make small pieces. You can cut round pieces if you want. When I was first making the waxed linen, I cut round pieces because that's how I was seeing it for sale on the internet, on various websites that sell reenactor goods. So I was cutting round pieces and making them, but I've kind of changed that because I thought, well, you know, people in the Middle Ages may not have, you know, wasted the fabric by cutting the corners off. I don't know. I don't know of any surviving pieces of waxed linen. So, and how the waxed linen works, and this is a cup I have with a waxed linen mug cover on it. There's my arm. Is you have the cover, and a lot of you have these. I've given these out to a lot of people. These were my vigil token when I had those. You basically put it over your mug or your cup, and the heat from your hand makes that wax pliable and soft, and so then you can mold it around whatever you're molding it to, and it will hold that shape. It will basically hold that shape, and you can take the cover off and you see it kind of still holds that shape. All right. So let me see if I can see. I don't see many questions. How long does it last? What are the signs? Let me move the camera that it's time to get a new one. It lasts for a very long time. You can wash it, and you can wash it with warm soap and water, not real hot water because that might take away some of the wax. But you can wash it, you can reuse it. If the wax starts to get a little thin, you can re-dip it. But basically, when it just starts looking too grungy to use, that's the sign that you need to make a new one or get a new one. If it gets cracked, it doesn't necessarily need to be redone. Those cracks are mainly cosmetic. It looks like it's cracked, but it's the wax is still permeating the fabric. Once it gets too gnarly for you to want to use it, you can use it as a fire starter. It's basically a flat candle. It is fabric permeated with wax, so you can definitely use it as a fire starter when it gets too gnarly to use, for you to want to use it to wrap or cover anything. So let me go ahead and show you, just jump right in to show you how to make it. This is going to be a really quick class because this is not a really involved subject. I am going to take my first piece of linen, and I just made straight cuts, and you can see the threads are starting to fray a little bit. Once it's dipped, it's not going to fray anymore. So you don't need to, I've seen some prepared by pinking the edges, but you don't really need to do that. You don't need to do any kind of finish on the edge. You're just going to basically lay it in your melted wax, and you see the wax is starting to saturate. I have these giant tweezers that I use for this class. Again, I only use them for this class because they do get coated with wax. And I'm just going to make sure that that gets nice and saturated with the wax, and then I'm going to take a couple of these tweezers and I'm going to grab the edge and I'm going to start slowly lifting it out. And the reason why I am lifting it out slowly is because I want the excess wax, the excess molten wax, I want that to have the opportunity to run down the fabric, so that as much of the excess runs off before I actually lift it out. If I lift it out too fast, it will tend to get a really globby bottom edge where all that excess wax will stop and harden. All right, so I've got this piece out. I'm going to try to disengage my tweezers because they're going to want to stick. They're sticking. Yeah. Okay. And this is already cool enough to touch. It's still pretty warm. It is cool enough to touch, and I've got that extra thread. I'm just going to pull that thread, that fraying thread right off. And here you have your piece of waxed linen. And I'm just gonna, it's cool enough, and you can kind of see where that wax is built up on that bottom edge. I'm gonna lay this down on my surface, make sure it's laying nice and flat. And it's not gonna rub off on the table. And that is basically all there is to making wax linen. You saturate it. It says, have you ever used wax pastilles to melt? I have never used the wax pastilles. A pastille is a little bead, a little tiny bead of wax. You can buy wax either in a block, you can buy it in little pastilles, little beads of wax. The little pastilles melt more quickly, but it's less expensive to buy beeswax in a block. So I generally buy beeswax in blocks from, and I try to get it from local beekeepers. So anytime I'm at a fair or at an SCA event, I will try to find a beekeeper to buy the wax from. I usually don't have any problems, and I don't have a whole lot of wax in this pan. I would say that I've got maybe a quarter of an inch. I've got about a quarter of an inch of wax in the pan. Let's go ahead and make another piece. When I'm done, I turn the pan off and the remaining wax in the pan hardens, and it takes about 15 minutes to reheat so that then I can be ready to make more wax linen. So again, I'm going to lift that out really slowly. The slower, the better. For some reason, it is really not wanting to release from that tweezer really easily, not that first tweezer. All right. Sometimes there's a little glob where the tweezer is. I kind of smooth that out. There's a big old, I'll melt that's a thread, but the wax will melt off of that. And you can kind of see that bottom edge is a little globby. The slower you take it out of the wax, the less globby that bottom edge is. But again, this is ready to, it's cool enough to the touch, I can handle it, and I'm just going to put it on my surface and let it finish cooling flat. Let me see what other questions. Aha. How long do these things last? They last a long time. They are washable and reusable. Beeswax has antibacterial properties. So it basically doesn't go bad. The wax can wear off with use. You can re-wax the piece. As I said earlier, once it gets just too gnarly to use, you can use it as a fire starter because it works really well for that. You can also wax cotton. This is a piece of printed cotton, and you can wax cotton as well. I'm gonna dip that in there. And I don't have historical documentation for this, but when I made my vigil tokens, I did do a stamped design on the let me reach in here. Here's my arm again. I did do a stamped design on them, and I know other people have done that to make site tokens for their events. You can also use scraps of linen that you have in color. This is an example of a lavender linen that I dipped in regular beeswax, and you can kind of see it made that color kind of darker, more subdued and darker. But there's the original fabric, and here's the dipped. So this is a piece of white linen. This is the original color, and then I don't know if you can see the lovely just golden beeswax color. Yes, you do block print it before you dip it in the wax. Do any kind of design on it before you dip it. And that dipping also seals it in, seals that painting in. So this didn't need to soak that long, but I just thought I'd take a second to read the questions. And I'm really sorry, I can only read like a couple of questions before they scroll away on my phone, so I hope I'm answering all of your questions. If not, when I review the video, I will answer any questions I did not get to. Okay, and so here's the piece of cotton. Get it out. And you can see that did kind of made that color look a lot more rich. I really kind of like the way that turned out. So again, you can do cotton as well as linen. Cotton, of course, was more rare in the Middle Ages, but any kind of scraps that you have left over from your sewing, definitely you can recycle your scraps to make waxed linen, waxed cotton. And again, this is mug size cover. This is a 5-inch square. 5-inch square makes a really nice mug cover. If you do a 12-inch square, which is about the maximum this setup could do, it's a nice cover for a plate. If you have something that's like 8 or 10 inches square, that would be a cover for a bowl. So you can definitely make them in different sizes depending on what you need them for. Let's see. Yes, the question's being asked again. You do stamp the design on the fabric before you dip it, before you do the wax. Any kind of design that you're going to do. I'm kind of moving the camera so I can read the questions a little better. Adelaide, you'll be interested in knowing that I did get the 3D printed camera holder done for this video. I'm just going to kind of look at my class handout. My husband Bruce posted a link to the class handout that has the safety warnings. I'm just kind of glancing through it to see if there's anything else I want to share with you. Again, this is a really quick class. It's basically you safely melt wax, you dip your fabric into it, you remove it slowly. I have not tried it with wool, and I would not try it with wool. I think that the nature of wool, the kind of fuzzy nature of wool, doesn't really lend itself to this. So no, I have not tried it with wool. I've only used linen or cotton. Let's see. Could this be used in a kitchen for wrapping dough? Yes, it can be used for any purpose for which you would normally use a plastic wrap. It basically forms a watertight, airtight seal around whatever it is you are wrapping in it. The class handout has some mentions of what waxed linen, how documented uses of waxed linen in period. I don't know that they actually used it as mug covers the way I do and other people do. But it was definitely used to cover jars to store food. It was used even as a window covering in the Roman settlement in Britain. They document that waxed linen was used as a window covering because it does let in light, but it will not let in the elements. I'll let that out. It was used in medieval churches as a moisture barrier between the stone altars and the nice altar cloths. So you see in some inventories, and I mentioned this citation in the class handout, where parish had a budget for buying linen or buying the wax linen for the altar. And let's see, do I have one more piece of fabric? I think you all are kind of getting the mechanics of this down pretty well. You just dip it, pull it out. Let me check my questions again. Yes, and you will see, actually, it is a good alternative to plastic wrap in even modern daily life. You will see a lot of advertisements for this new green alternative to plastic wrap. And it's generally a waxed cotton, but it is basically fabric that has been dipped in wax, or in most cases, a mixture of wax and resin. I have never added resin to my wax. Makes it a little stickier. But you will find this online. People are selling this, you know, in beautiful, lovely prints, festive, but it's basically waxed fabric. It's cotton, but it's the same technique. And you can make it yourself much more economically than you can buy it online. All right, so that is the basics of making waxed linen. So are there any other questions before I wrap up this lesson on making wrap? I'm gonna wait just another second. All right, so if you do still have questions and I haven't gotten to them yet, please continue to make those in the comments. I will answer all other questions in the comments as I am able. This video will be posted to my Facebook page fairly directly. I may do some editing before I put it up on Facebook, or not Facebook, well, on my OneDrive. I sometimes will put it up on my OneDrive. I also have a YouTube channel. So I hope you all enjoyed this. I hope that you at some point find a way to do this yourself. It's a nice addition to have in your kit, whether you're out in the field and you want something to cover your food, wrap up your food before you take it out to an event, or just something to cover your mug when you're at an outdoor event. This will keep the bees out of your mead. It will keep the bugs out of your mug. It will not keep the peers out of your beer, though, so there are limitations. I hope you did enjoy the class, and again, please continue to ask questions, and have a good night. Oh, one last question. Where did I buy the wax? I try to buy them from beekeepers. I think this might be the last of the wax that I got at Gulf a couple of years ago. There was a merchant there selling giant cakes of wax. So I bought some loaf pan size chunks of wax, and I've been kind of working my way through that. But anytime I find at like a county fair or something like that, beekeeper selling their own beeswax, that's where I try to get it. Beeswax at the craft store, I'm never certain if it's been mixed with paraffin. So I do try to get it from a beekeeper. So, all right. Well, I will wrap this up now. So have a good night, and we'll catch you all later. Bye-bye.